So let's talk about this Tree of Life shooting. So over the weekend, obviously, the worst anti-Semitic shooting attack in the history of the United States. 11 people murdered in a synagogue during what we call a Brit Milah, a bris, which is where an 8-day-old boy is circumcised, and the baby naming ceremony takes place at that point. This was a conservative synagogue, not a politically conservative synagogue, a religiously conservative synagogue in Judaism, in American Judaism anyway. There are several branches of Judaism. I'm an Orthodox Jew, which means deeply observant, keep Sabbath, don't drive on Sabbath, keep kosher. There's conservative Judaism, which is sort of less Orthodox. People drive on Sabbath. They sort of keep a form of Sabbath. They don't keep full kosher, but they have certain respect for Torah laws. In any case, this conservative synagogue didn't have much security, and an anti-Semitic white supremacist, but I repeat myself, walked into the synagogue armed with an AR-15 and proceeded to shoot up the bris milah. He was screaming at the time, "All Jews must die." So obviously a subtle fellow. So why does this matter? First of all, I think that we need to get something off the table right away. When an anti-Semitic attack occurs, you generally don't need to bother blaming particular politicians. Anti-Semitism is literally as old as the Jewish people. Literally as old as the Jewish people. Now, there are politicians in the past who have called for anti-Semitism. There are politicians in the past who have actively called for the murder of Jews. I'm not seeing a lot of those on today's American scene. There are a lot of politicians on today's American scene who hobnob with anti-Semites, who make common cause with anti-Semites. And we'll get to all of that in just a second. But folks who are blaming the left or the right for the anti-Semitic shooting that happened yesterday, white supremacism and anti-Semitic attacks on Jews have existed for decades in this country, long before anything that is going on in today's politics. And that's not to downplay what's happening in today's politics. That's what the rest of the show is going to be about. But let's just be clear about this. When it comes to attacks on Jews, there is nothing new under the sun. Legitimately nothing new under the sun. I don't know a single Jew, seriously, a single Jew, who is not 1 degree removed from a violent attack on a Jew. And that's not to say that America is a violent country for Jews. It is not. America is the safest country in world history for Jews. America is an incredible place for Jews. But because the Jewish population is so small, and because so many Jews know each other, and because the Jews sort of consider themselves an extended family, just as Christians consider themselves an extended religious family, it's difficult not to feel it deeply, obviously, when an attack like this takes place. The history of the Jewish people is filled with fractious division, but history has treated the Jews as a closely bound unit. Jewish identity isn't really a choice, it's a reality. Modernity has obscured this for a lot of Jews, but the fact is that all Jews are in the same boat when it comes to anti-Semites like this. And as I say, every Jew is 1 degree removed from some level of anti-Semitic violence. Now, I live in the Los Angeles community. I'm probably, if not the most prominent Orthodox Jew in the country, the most prominent Orthodox Jew wearing a yarmulke in the country, I think would be fair to say. I walk around in public with a yarmulke. That's how safe I think this country is. I live in a city with some 900,000 Jews. Los Angeles has 900,000 Jews living in the city. Still, anti-Semitic attacks have occurred in the LA Jewish community since I was a child. In 1991, a synagogue just down the block from me was firebombed. In 1999, a white supremacist drove past the high school that I would attend a year later, checked it out, and then proceeded to drive over to the West Valley JCC and shoot it up. In 2002, a radical Muslim terrorist walked into the El Al counter at LAX and shot up the El Al counter, killing a member of my community. When I attended the Yeshiva University High School of Los Angeles, we had bomb scares, bomb threats. Maybe every 3 months, we'd have to evacuate the school. So anti-Semitism, particularly from white supremacists, is nothing new here. So this brings us to the bigger question. This brings us to the bigger question, and that is why this thing happened right now. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of the shooter because I don't mention the name of terrorists or mass shooters on the program. I don't want to give them any sort of glory. This mass shooter used a little-known social network to spew hatred toward Jews. He called them the children of Satan as he showed off his family of firearms. He now faces the death penalty after unleashing the guns on worshipers at the Tree of Life synagogue. He was particularly upset about a Jewish nonprofit providing aid to refugees. The Jewish nonprofit is called Hias, and he tweeted, "Hias likes to bring in invaders that kill our people. I can't sit by and watch my people get slaughtered. Screw your optics. I'm going in." That was the last tweet that he sent before he went and murdered a bunch of Jews, most of them over the age of 50, including a Holocaust survivor. He also had a particular dislike for President Trump. He dismissed President Trump as a globalist rather than a nationalist. He said, "There is no MAGA as long as there is a kike infestation." I'm going to use the word here because I think it's imperative to know the language that these monsters use, these evil, evil people. So the media's take on all of this has, I think, been quite simplistic and foolish. They have, of course, suggested that President Trump is responsible for everything. President Trump is responsible for the shooting, specifically because President Trump in 2016, 2017 winked and nodded at the alt-right. Now, I was highly critical of President Trump for doing that. I am highly critical of President Trump for doing that. I was the #1 target of alt-right anti-Semitism online in 2016 with a bullet. It was not close. 40% of all anti-Semitic tweets by the alt-right in 2016 were directed at me personally. Okay, so I am well acquainted with the folks that President Trump winked and nodded at. This guy was not alt-right. He was a white supremacist. There is a slight difference. He is not a member of the modern alt-right movement, which is disgusting and evil and anti-Semitic in and of itself.